Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. James Whitman sat in his bright office, surrounded by glass walls offering a breathtaking view of Manhattan. Despite his colossal success, several thriving businesses, yachts, and luxury properties, a tiny detail had just disturbed his peace: a late rent payment. Usually, this kind of incident didn't bother him. But this time, a curiosity deeper than a simple financial matter was awakened in him. He leaned over his surveillance screen, scanning the images from the small building he owned in a working-class Brooklyn neighborhood. There, in the back room of a modest apartment, he saw a young black woman. Her shoulders were hunched with exhaustion, her quick, deft hands busily sewing a garment. Each movement seemed calculated, precise, but tinged with fatigue and tension. Her eyes, large and alert, betrayed both concentration and the fear of never completing her task. James felt an unexpected mixture of emotion, astonishment, admiration, and something he hadn't felt in years, a pang of conscience. Who was this young woman? Why was she working so hard, to the point of exhaustion, when a simple rent payment would have been enough to relieve her? He watched the scene for a long time, noting the precision of her movements, the speed with which she repaired, assembled, and shaped the fabric. There was a quiet, almost hypnotic grace in her movements that money couldn't buy. Daylight filtered through the room's dirty curtains, creating patterns of light and shadow on the floor. Needles danced, threads tangled, and James stood frozen, unable to look away. He realized then that this small rent delay wasn't just a financial formality, it was a window into a world he knew nothing about, a world of struggle, perseverance, and dignity. Without understanding why, he stood up, placed his glass of whiskey on his desk and muttered to himself. "Who are you, young woman, to carry so much weight alone?" At that moment, James Whitman knew this chance encounter would revolutionize his worldview and, perhaps, change his life forever. This simple rent delay had opened a door he had never thought he would walk through, the invisible reality of those who work in the shadows, and the extraordinary power hidden within a single human being. James Whitman could no longer ignore the image he saw on his surveillance screen. The exhaustion visible on the young woman's face and the way she applied herself to sewing each stitch with almost obsessive precision haunted him. He decided he had to see with his own eyes what was happening in that Brooklyn apartment. Within minutes, he was in his luxury car, driving down the bustling streets of the working-class neighborhood. The shop windows, children playing on the sidewalk, and the smell of fresh bread from a nearby bakery were a stark contrast to his world of glass, chrome, and opulence. Arriving in front of the building, he examined the crumbling facade. The contrast with its gleaming skyscrapers was striking. He climbed the creaking stairs to the second floor and knocked gently on the door of the back room where he had seen the young woman. After a moment, the door opened and a tired but firm voice answered. "Yes?" James, slightly surprised by the firmness of the voice, introduced himself. "Hello, I'm James Whitman. I'm the owner of this building. I just wanted to check something about the rent." The young woman stared at him for a moment, her eyes betraying an instinctive distrust. Her hands were stained with ink and thread, and a few strands of hair escaped from her ponytail. "Maya Johnson," she said finally. "I'm the one who lives here." "And you're?" "James Whitman," he repeated with a slight smile, a little uncomfortable with her vigilance. I wanted to make sure everything was okay." Maya sighed and gestured inward. "Come in, if you want, but I'm a little busy." James entered and was immediately struck by the contrast with his world. The room was tiny, cluttered with fabric, spools of thread, and sewing machines. A single lamp dimly lit the small space, casting shifting shadows on the sketch-covered walls. The air was warm, saturated with the smell of fabric and the sweat of hard work. "I didn't mean to disturb you," James murmured as he approached, impressed by the scene. "I've never seen anyone work with such dedication." Maya paused for a moment, looking at him with a mixture of suspicion and curiosity. "Devotion?" she said softly. "It's not about dedication. It's about survival. You can't understand." James felt a pang in his heart. He realized then that the money, luxury, and power he'd always had access to had never given him a glimpse of what it was really like to fight for every penny. "I want to understand," he replied sincerely. "If you allow me, I would like to learn from you." Maya raised an eyebrow in disbelief, but a flicker of curiosity crossed her tired gaze. "You have money, lots of money. And yet you're here, watching someone work themselves to death. Why?" James was silent for a moment. Then he whispered, almost to himself. "Because I believe some lessons aren't learned in a glass office. And because I have a feeling you have something to teach me, Maya Johnson." For the first time in a long time, Maya cracked a small smile, a mixture of defiance and respect. That day, in that tiny Brooklyn back room, two seemingly separate worlds collided. And neither would emerge unscathed. Maya's alarm went off at 5:30 a.m., long before most of the neighborhood residents thought to open their eyes. Her small apartment, which she shared with a few boxes and a too-narrow bed, was already filled with the first rays of sunlight filtering through the holy curtains. She stretched tiredly and took a deep breath. Every day began with the same routine, making a black coffee, checking her messages, and mentally preparing for a day that would last much longer than 24 hours. By 6 a.m., she was already in the subway corridors, her backpack heavy with fabrics and sketches. Each station was a challenge, jostling, strong smells, delays. But Maya moved forward, unfazed. She had learned to navigate the chaos without ever showing a sign of weakness. Each person she passed was just part of the scenery, but her eyes remained attentive to details, a loose thread, a poorly sewn seam, an opportunity not to be missed. Her main job was in the back room of a small haberdashery, where she sewed orders for a few loyal customers. The days passed in a whirlwind of sewing machines, colorful fabrics, and the smell of cotton and linen. Her fingers, deft and precise, ran over the fabric as if they knew every stitch before she even decided to sew it. But every seam, every effort, cost her a portion of her vital energy. At lunchtime, she would sit down for a few minutes to eat a dry, often cold, sandwich while the needles continued their frenetic ballet. Maya had dreamed of creating her own clothing line for years, but bills, rent, and groceries constantly held her back. When she finally left the haberdashery in the late afternoon, her heavy arms still carried the bags of fabric she had to take home to finish the night's orders. At home, she continued to work until late at night, her tired but determined eyes fixed on every stitch, every detail, every seam that could transform a simple garment into a masterpiece. And yet, despite the fatigue, Maya never complained. The pain in her back, the dark circles under her eyes, the occasional hunger, all of that was secondary. What mattered was her vision. Every garment she created, every perfect seam, was a silent promise she made to herself: she would succeed, no matter the obstacles. That night, as she finally stopped to catch her breath, her phone vibrated. A message: "Your rent has been paid." Anonymous. Maya froze. Who could do this? And why? She knew no one around her could get away with it. Fatigue made her even more perplexed, but an unexpected glimmer of hope crossed her tired eyes. For the first time in a long time, she felt that maybe the world wasn't entirely against her. Unknowingly, this action would be the beginning of an encounter that would change her life, and that of James Whitman, the millionaire intrigued by her determination and quiet courage. James Whitman could no longer concentrate on his files. The image of Maya, exhausted but stubborn, continued to replay in his mind. Everything about her gait, the way she worked with quiet intensity, fascinated him. He wasn't one to be moved easily, but something about her aroused a curiosity in him he'd never felt before. He decided to return, not to settle a rent issue this time, but to understand the life of this young woman he had observed through his screen. As he entered the neighborhood, he realized how different its worlds were. Here, the streets were alive, but noisy and sometimes merciless. There, its skyscrapers shone with glass and light, but remained cold and impersonal. James took the time to look at the building from the outside. The haberdashery sign creaked in the wind and the paint was peeling. He climbed the worn wooden stairs, his heart pounding with curiosity mixed with apprehension. He knocked on the door and, after a silence, Maya appeared, her hands stained with thread and her eyes narrowed with fatigue. You again?" she asked, half surprised, half irritated. "Yes," James replied with a genuine smile. I wanted to understand. To understand why someone would work so hard for so little." Maya raised an eyebrow, intrigued but wary. "And you think you can understand something you've never experienced?" "I want to try," he said calmly. Because I believe there are things you can't learn in a glass office, or in a bank account." Maya watched him for a moment. He spoke honestly, and this honesty contrasted with the superficial world she imagined behind his expensive clothes. She nodded slowly, a mixture of defiance and curiosity in her eyes. "All right," she said. "You can come in. But don't expect me to show you everything. You might be shocked." Inside, the smell of fabric, wax, and sweat permeated the air. The sewing machines whirred tirelessly. Maya's hands flew over the fabric, each movement precise and swift, each stitch perfectly aligned. James watched silently, fascinated by her mastery. "You're truly amazing," he said finally, his voice full of admiration. "How do you keep up that energy?" "It's not energy," Maya replied, wiping her forehead. "It's necessity. Every seam, every garment, every penny earned is a step towards something better. I can't afford to stop." James felt a strange humility wash over him. In his world, everything was easy, instantaneous, and yet here he was, in this small, modest space, admiring the quiet strength of a young woman who, without luxury or privilege, was shaping her life with courage and determination. "I want to learn from you," he whispered. "Not to change your life, but to understand mine." Maya smiled slightly, amused and puzzled. "Understand mine? Very well, Mr. Millionaire. If you think you can keep up, then stay. But know one thing, you will see the reality, and it is not pretty." James nodded, determined. He knew this curiosity would transform him, just as Maya would eventually discover that this wealthy stranger wasn't just a bystander, but someone ready to make a difference, as long as he learned to respect her world, her struggles, and her dignity. In the days that followed, James thought about Maya incessantly. He kept seeing her skillful hands sewing with hypnotic precision, her tired but determined eyes, and that silent strength that seemed almost supernatural. Every night, he wondered how he could help her without breaking her pride or compromising her independence. One morning, he made a decision. He quietly went to the bank and anonymously paid Maya's overdue rent. His gesture was simple, but for him, it was a way to show her that someone noticed his efforts and that they weren't indifferent to his daily struggle. Maya, returning home after a long day of sewing, opened her mailbox. She found an envelope containing the rent payment notice. Her eyes widened. "What?" she whispered incredulously. She reread the document several times, first thinking it was a mistake. But there was no doubt about it, the rent was paid, in full, and with the note, paid by a third party. Her heart was beating fast. Who could do this? And why? That evening, in the back room, she spoke about it to her friend and work colleague. "Listen, I don't understand, my rent, someone paid it." "That's incredible," said her friend. "Perhaps a secret admirer?" "A secret admirer?" Maya murmured skeptically. "I don't know anyone here who would get away with that." Despite her fatigue, she felt a strange mixture of gratitude and confusion. This anonymous gesture, though discreet, had awakened in her a glimmer of hope she hadn't felt in a long time. For the first time in months, she allowed herself to smile, even if she remained wary. The next day, James took another step. He showed up at Maya's door, this time without financial pretext. "Hello," he said calmly. "I wanted to check if everything was okay." "It's fine," Maya replied, wary but polite. "Thanks. I guess." She sensed something had changed. This wasn't just a wealthy landlord coming to check on her building, there was an authenticity in his gaze, a sincere and respectful curiosity. I don't want to bother you, James said hesitantly. But I think your work deserves recognition. You're incredible, Maya. And I wish I could help you. Maya stared at him, surprised by the frankness and gentleness of his words. She had been used to fending for herself, to relying only on herself. The idea that a stranger could genuinely want to help her, without ulterior motives, unsettled her. Why are you doing this? She finally asked, her voice trembling. Because I believe some people deserve to be noticed, James replied. And you, Maya Johnson, you're one of those people. A silence fell, heavy with tension and curiosity. Maya understood that this man wasn't just intrigued by her work, he was intrigued by her strength, her resilience, and her humanity. And for the first time in a long time, she felt seen, not for what she possessed or what she could offer, but for who she truly was. That simple gesture, that anonymous payment, and that unexpected visit marked the beginning of a complex and profound relationship. James had just crossed a line, he was no longer just a spectator. He was beginning to enter Maya's world, and she would have to decide if she could let him in. On the day of their formal meeting, the air in the back room seemed charged with electricity. Maya was hunched over her sewing machine, her face etched with fatigue and concentration, when James entered, quietly, almost cautiously. "Hello," he said, trying not to sound imposing. Maya looked up, frowning. "Hello, you again. What do you want this time?" James took a few steps into the narrow space, observing the fabrics, spools of thread, and sketches scattered on the tables. I wanted to talk to you. Not about rent, not about finances, just you." Maya sighed and placed her thread-stained hands on the table. "Talk to me? You know nothing about my life, Mr. Whitman. You've seen a few videos and anonymous payments. That's not enough to understand what it's like to fight every day." "I know," he admitted. "And I don't pretend to understand. But I want to learn." A silence fell. Maya scrutinized him, assessing his sincerity. Then she stood and took a few steps toward him. "You have money, lots of money, and you chose to come here, why? Why me?" James took a deep breath, his hands clenched slightly. "Because you're different. Not in the way some might think, but in the way you stand up to everything, in your determination. You refuse to give in, even when everything is against you. It's impressive." Maya looked down, touched despite herself. She wasn't used to people noticing her strength, especially not like this. "Determination doesn't always pay off," she said softly. "Sometimes it doesn't change anything." "Maybe," replied James, "but sometimes it inspires." "You inspire me." She looked at him, intrigued, her eyes shining with a mixture of defiance and curiosity. "Do you think you can keep up with me, in my world of work and struggle?" she said, a slight smile on her lips. "Not follow," he said. "Understand. That's different." Their eyes met, a mixture of mutual respect and palpable tension. James realized this wasn't simply admiring a courageous young woman, it was recognizing a world he'd ignored, a world shaped by resilience and quiet effort. "All right," Maya said finally. "You can stay, but know that this world is not kind. You might be disappointed, shocked, or worse, frustrated." "I'm ready to learn," James replied determinedly. For the first time, they understood each other without the need for additional words. This face-to-face meeting marked the beginning of a complex and fragile bond, based on respect, curiosity, and a mutual admiration that would only continue to grow with each passing day. That evening, as Maya returned to work and James watched silently, both knew their meeting would change their lives forever. Late rent payments and sewing hours were no longer simply constraints or obligations, they were becoming the starting point for an unexpected story, where two diametrically opposed worlds would learn to understand each other. As the weeks passed, James's presence in the back room became less surprising to Maya. He never interfered with her work, never touched the machines, and simply observed, occasionally asking a question or complimenting her work. But little by little, he became a silent guide, an unexpected mentor. One afternoon, as the sun filtered through the curtains, James approached with a small notebook in his hand. "Maya," he said softly, "I thought of something. I believe your talent deserves more than these modest commissions. I could help you create your own clothing line, if you like." Maya looked up, surprised and suspicious. "My own, what?" she said incredulously. "You're joking, aren't you?" "Not at all," James replied seriously. "But I want you to understand that this is not a gift. It's an opportunity. You decide whether you want to take it or not." She rubbed her eyes, unable to believe what she was hearing. "Why me? You could help anyone." "No," he said firmly. "I'm helping you because I believe in you. You have something many don't: determination, precision, and the ability to transform difficulty into art." Maya stood up, pacing around the narrow space, her mind swirling with questions and doubts. "But I've never had the money, the connections, or the resources to create something this big. How could you help me overcome all this?" James smiled at him calmly. "I'll give you the means, not the glory. The contacts, the materials, the advice, but all the credit will be yours. You'll be free to create, to decide, to succeed on your own." Maya stared at him for a long time. What he was offering was much more than financial assistance. It was real mentoring, based on respect for her talent and autonomy. She felt a mixture of excitement and fear. "Very well," she said finally. "But know one thing: I do not accept being treated like a project or a curiosity. I am solely responsible for my work and my success." "I wouldn't expect anything less," James replied with a smile. "I'll be here to guide you, not tell you what to do." Thus began their true collaboration. James, wealthy and experienced in the business world, brought his knowledge, contacts, and resources. Maya, talented and relentless, brought her creativity, precision, and vision. Together, they formed an unlikely alliance, where each learned from the other, and where respect and trust were built slowly but steadily. As the days passed, James discovered the minute details of Maya's work: the way she chose the fabrics, the patience she put into each stitch, the attention she paid to the smallest details. Maya, for her part, learned to understand the strategies of the fashion industry, order and client management, and even the value of allowing herself to accept help. One evening, as they were putting away the last orders, Maya sighed and said, "You know, James, I never thought a millionaire would understand the value of hard work." "And he murmured, "I never thought a young woman in a small shop could teach me so much about true determination." For the first time, they saw each other not as boss and employee, or rich and poor, but as two people capable of learning from each other. A mutual trust was born, fragile but powerful, ready to withstand the challenges that awaited them. Maya woke up that morning with a strange feeling in her chest, a combination of excitement, fear, and doubt. The project James had proposed seemed within reach, yet she felt overwhelmed by the responsibility and enormity of what lay ahead. She knew that every choice, every stitch, every decision could determine the future of her career. As she set up her sewing machine, she muttered to herself, "I can't afford to fail, not after all this journey." Her hands were shaking slightly as she began to piece the fabric together. The fatigue of the past few weeks was making itself felt, and her mind was filled with conflicting thoughts. Should I accept James's help completely? Can I do it alone, or do I need him? The tension increased when she received a message from James. "I spoke to some contacts in the fashion industry. They're interested in your work. We need to prepare for the presentation." Maya felt her heart race. The opportunity was real, tangible, but it felt overwhelming. She stood up, walked into the studio, and looked around at the fabrics, sketches, and prototypes she had created alone. Each piece was a part of her life, her identity, her hard work. The thought that someone else might now influence or see these creations filled her with apprehension. Later, James arrived, as agreed, with a briefcase filled with high-end fabric samples and professional contacts. "Ready?" he asked softly. Maya took a deep breath. "Ready. I guess. But know that I don't want you to do my work for me. I want to succeed on my own. I have no doubt about it, James replied with a smile. I'm here to support you, not replace you. For the next few hours, they worked side by side. James offered advice on presentation and business details, while Maya carefully refined her designs. But despite their collaboration, a sense of doubt lingered in Maya's mind. She feared she wouldn't measure up, would disappoint James, or worse, would betray her own vision by trying to please others. James, she finally whispered, after catching her breath, what if I'm wrong? What if I don't succeed? Maya, he replied calmly, you've spent your entire life turning obstacles into opportunities. This doubt is normal, but it doesn't define your talent. Every stitch you sew, every decision you make, is yours. I'm just here to remind you that you can do it. These words resonated deeply within her. She understood that fear and doubt were natural companions on the path to success, but they should not paralyze her. She returned to her work with renewed determination, focused on every detail, every seam, every fiber of fabric. At the end of the day, Maya stopped, looked at her work, and for the first time in a long time, felt proud of what she had accomplished. The road was still long, fraught with challenges and pressures, but she now knew she could count on herself, and on James, in the quiet but strong role of mentor. That day marked a turning point. Maya realized that ambition and independence were not incompatible with outside help. On the contrary, collaboration could amplify her strength, if she could keep her integrity and vision intact. The weeks passed in a whirlwind of work, revisions, and refinements. Maya spent her days designing, sewing, and assembling her creations, and her nights pondering every detail of the upcoming presentation. Every stitch, every fabric, every finish was precisely thought out. Her apartment, once a mere back room for survival, now resembled a veritable creative workshop, laden with sketches, fabrics, and prototypes. One morning, James arrived with a big smile and a small notebook in his hand. Maya, he said enthusiastically, I have some great news. I spoke to a panel of judges for a local competition for young designers, and they want to see your work. It's a great chance to showcase your talent. Maya felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness wash over her. She knew this competition could be a decisive step in her career, but the pressure was immense. I don't know if I'm ready, she whispered. What if I make a mistake? You're ready, James replied confidently. You've worked harder than anyone I've ever met. The mistake isn't in trying, but in not trying. Over the next few days, Maya dedicated herself entirely to creating a prototype that would represent her vision and identity, a dress that combined elegance, boldness, and uniqueness, with subtle yet precise details that reflected her hard work and personality. Each seam told a story, each fold revealed her mastery and passion. The day of the competition arrived. Maya, dressed simply but with determination, presented her creation to the judges. The lights, the critical glances, and the competitive atmosphere could have paralyzed her. But she remained focused, proud of what she had accomplished. As the judges examined her dress, the murmurs began. The judges were impressed by the precision of the stitching, the quality of the fabrics, and the originality of the design. For the first time, Maya realized that her talent, nurtured by years of effort and perseverance, was being recognized by professionals outside her small world. After a few moments of deliberation, the jury announced the winner. Maya's name echoed through the room. She felt her heart leap in her chest. Emotion, surprise, and pride mingled, and for the first time, she allowed herself to feel fully legitimate. James, in the audience, smiled at Maya's reaction. He knew this moment was more than just a competition win, it was tangible proof that his perseverance and hard work had paid off. You did more than win, James murmured when he joined her after the ceremony. You showed the world what I knew all along, you are exceptional. Maya looked at him, her eyes shining with gratitude and emotion. Thank you. Thank you for believing in me, James. I never thought this would be possible. I didn't do all this, he said softly. You did. I only opened a door. You crossed the threshold. This recognition marked a turning point in Maya's life. she realized that her years of effort, sacrifice, and struggle had finally paid off. And for James, this moment reinforced his belief that sometimes, observing and supporting without imposing allows exceptional talent to shine. The chance encounter between a millionaire and a young, exhausted black seamstress was no longer just a coincidence. It was the beginning of a collaboration and friendship that would redefine both their lives. The following months were intense. Maya, now fully invested in her project, worked tirelessly to finalize her first clothing line. Each creation was designed to reflect her unique style, bold cuts, quality fabrics, and meticulous details that revealed her hard work and artistic vision. James was always by her side, not to direct, but to provide advice and contacts in the demanding world of fashion. "Are you ready for launch?" James asked one morning as they inspected the last pieces in the workshop. Maya nodded, her face marked by dark circles but lit by a new determination. "More than ever. Every point, every detail has been checked. Everything is perfect." Launch day arrived. Maya had organized a small, private presentation for investors, journalists, and fashion influencers. The tension in the air was palpable, but Maya remained focused. She knew this moment was worth all the sacrifices, all the sleepless nights, and all the hours spent exhaustingly sewing. When guests discovered her line, the reactions were immediate: admiration, surprise, and wonder. The refined details, the originality of the creations, and the impeccable quality were unanimously acclaimed. Orders poured in quickly, and for the first time, Maya saw the fruits of her hard work materialize in the form of success and recognition. "You see, Maya," James said, smiling, "the world is finally recognizing what I saw from day one. Your talent is exceptional." Maya felt a wave of emotion wash over her. She remembered those nights spent sewing until she was exhausted, every moment of doubt and loneliness. And now, all the work, all the sacrifices, it all finally made sense. I can't believe this is real," she whispered. "I've worked so hard alone, and now, this is unbelievable." "You didn't work alone," James replied softly. "I was there, sure, but you're the one who accomplished everything. Every success is yours." For Maya, this day marked not only a professional success, but also a personal victory. She had proven that a young black woman from a modest neighborhood could not only dream big, but also achieve excellence. The social and economic barriers, the doubts and fatigue accumulated over the years, had been overcome thanks to her perseverance and vision. James, meanwhile, stood by her side, admiring and humble. He understood that he had learned as much from Maya as she had from him: the value of hard work, the importance of resilience, and the beauty of supporting without imposing. At the end of the day, as the lights in the workshop went out, Maya turned to James. "Thank you, James, for everything. I never thought my life could change like this." "This is just the beginning," he said with a smile. "The best is yet to come." For the first time, Maya felt fully in control of her destiny. Her rise was not only professional, but also personal. She had found her voice, her confidence, and a strength that no amount of fatigue or obstacle could take away from her. A few months after launching her first line, Maya had made her dream a reality. Her name was beginning to circulate in the fashion world, and her creations were now sought after for their originality and quality. Every success, every order, every compliment received was the result of her hard work, sacrifice, and perseverance. That morning, in her now spacious and bright workshop, Maya paused for a moment to contemplate the prototypes, sketches, and orders ready to be shipped. She smiled, a mixture of pride and emotion. Then, as usual, she looked up and saw James enter. "Hello," he said with a genuine smile. "How is the most determined designer I know doing?" Maya laughed softly, a rare sound of lightness in her world, which had been marked by fatigue until then. "Hello, James. I guess the most determined, yes, thanks to you too, in a way." "Me?" he whispered, a little surprised. "Yes," she replied. "You supported me, guided me, but never imposed. You respected my space and my work. Few people would have done that." James approached and observed Maya's work, admiring the precision of each seam, the fineness of each fabric, and the consistency of the complete line. "You have done more than succeed," he said. "You have transformed difficulty into art. You have proven that perseverance and talent know no boundaries." A complicit silence fell. Maya felt a deep emotion wash over her, gratitude, recognition, but above all the certainty that she had found in James a rare ally, someone capable of seeing beyond appearances and supporting without dominating. "I'll never forget what you did for me," she said finally. "Nor how you made me believe that my dreams could come true." "And I will never forget what you taught me," James replied. "You reminded me what resilience, courage, and dignity in the face of adversity truly meant." They exchanged a look full of respect and complicity. This wasn't a relationship of boss and employee, rich and poor, or even simple friendship. It was a bond forged by adversity, perseverance, and mutual respect, a bond that had transformed both of their lives. That day, in the studio filled with light and colorful fabrics, Maya understood that her journey was not just one of professional advancement, but of true personal transformation. She was no longer simply an exhausted young woman who sewed tirelessly to survive. She had become a recognized designer, confident, and ready to face all future challenges. James, for his part, realized that his wealth and power had taken on a new meaning, that of observing, learning from, and supporting exceptional talent without ever diminishing it. The millionaire had been shocked to discover a young woman exhausted by daily work. But that shock had been the starting point for an encounter that would change both of their lives. And in that small Brooklyn workshop, amidst the fabrics and dreams come true, James and Maya smiled, knowing that recognition, respect, and mutual admiration were the greatest successes of all.